The war in Ukraine has led to huge numbers of lives lost. Our ally, the United States, has changed its position. And there are doubts about what will happen next. At the same time, even the United States is trying to impose tariffs on goods coming from Europe. And the threat we are witnessing from war and terror is not diminishing. Our peace, our security are more uncertain. We are entering a new era. The war in Ukraine has lasted more than 3 years, and since the first day we decided to support Ukraine and impose sanctions on Russia. And that was the right choice, because it's not just the people of Ukraine who are fighting for their freedom, it's also our security which is under threat. If a country can invade its neighbor in Europe and go unpunished, then nobody can be sure of anything. It will be the law of might is right, and peace can no longer be guaranteed on our own continent. History has taught us that lesson. And beyond Ukraine, the Russian threat is real. It affects the European countries. It affects us. The conflict as Ukraine has become a global conflict. We're seeing North Korean fighters, Iranian equipment, which is being used to help Russia arm further. President Putin is violating our borders to assassinate opponents, manipulate elections, hack hospital systems. We see lies being disseminated on social media, and our limits are being tested in space, on land, at sea, in the air and behind our screens. Russia, through all this time, is continuing to arm, spending more than 40% of its budget to that end by 2030. Russia plans to increase its army to have 300,000 additional soldiers, 3,000 rather extra jet fighters. Who can believe that in this context, Russia will stop at Ukraine? Russia has become and will remain a threat to France and Europe. It is something I deeply regret. But in the long term, peace will return to our continent with a pacified Russia. But we have to look at the situation before us. To remain a spectator in this dangerous world would be crazy. We need, without any further ado, to take steps to guarantee the security of France, Europe and Ukraine first. All of the initiatives for peace are going in the right direction, and I welcome them. And we need to continue to help Ukrainians resist until they can negotiate with Russia a solid and lasting peace for themselves and for all of us. The path to peace cannot be achieved by abandoning Ukraine. We cannot conclude peace at any price, according to Russian dictate. The price of peace cannot be the collapse of Ukraine, nor can it be based on a weak ceasefire. And we've had experience of this in the past as well. We cannot forget. But Russia started its invasion of Ukraine in 2014, and we negotiated the Minsk Accords ceasefire. That was something that Russia didn't respect, and we weren't able to maintain a balance because there weren't solid guarantees. So we can't take Russia at its word. Russia has a right to peace and security for itself. And it's in our interest and the interest of the European continent. So we're working together with Britain, Germany and other allies. You saw me over the last week traveling for a few days to London, meeting with allies in Paris in order to make commitments that are necessary for Ukraine. And once a peace agreement is signed to stop Ukraine being invaded by Russia again, we need to prepare. Obviously, that will involve long-term commitment to the Ukrainian military and perhaps the deployment of European forces. Russia will see this. Our forces will be there if necessary, to guarantee peace, not before a peace agreement is signed. And we will continue to meet with allies to move towards the signing of such an agreement. It's a plan for a lasting, solid, verifiable peace agreement, which we're working on with European partners and Ukraine, and which I went to advocate for in the United States just a few days ago. I want to believe that the US will stand by our side, but we have to be ready for that not to be the case. Whether we reach peace in Ukraine soon or not, we need to be able to recognize the Russian threat and better defend ourselves in order to deter such attacks. Whatever happens, we need to provide ourselves with more arms, more equipment in terms of defense, to provide a dissuasive force. And we're committed on that path. We need to do more than we've done in the past to reinforce our defense and security. The future of Europe cannot be decided on in Moscow or Washington. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, we have seen 3 decades which are now behind us. We're moving on to a new age. We're meeting with the Commission tomorrow, the President of the European Council, for an extraordinary summit. We'll take a number of long-awaited steps which we've been proposing for a number of years, increase in military expenditure, which is something that will be allowed without having it to be subject to deficit rules. Measures to ensure that armaments can be produced on European soil. The latest cutting-edge technology will mobilize the government to strengthen our armies as soon as possible and accelerate reindustrialization in all of our countries. We'll work together with the enterprises in these sectors in the coming days. So, Europe's defense sector, which we've been asking for the last 8 years, will have to become a reality to allow European countries to defend and protect themselves, to produce the equipment they need in their countries, to allow them to cooperate more, and to allow them to reduce their dependence on outside actors. Germany, Poland, Denmark, Baltic states, and many of our partners have announced unprecedented efforts in terms of military spending. So as we look ahead to these actions, France has to recognize its special status. We have the most efficient, effective army in Europe. Because of the choices made by our forefathers after the Second World War, we have a nuclear deterrent, which protects us a lot more than many of our other neighbors. But we didn't expect, or rather, it wasn't necessary to await the invasion of Ukraine to recognize the increasing threats. We've seen how necessary it is to build our defense, and we've doubled our military budget, as you can see on this graph. Because of these efforts, we are now in a position to make supplementary investments. And we'll ask the government to work as quickly as possible on this. These are new investments which will allow us to mobilize private financing and public financing without increases in tax. Now, in order to allow us to do that, we need reforms, we need to make choices, and we need to be brave. Our nuclear deterrent helps us. It is comprehensive. It is a sovereign deterrent, French from beginning to end. And since 1964, it's always played a role in preserving peace and security in Europe. The future German Chancellor has called for a strategic debate on providing that same protection from deterrent to our European allies. Whatever happens, the decision will be in the hands of the President of the Republic and the heads of the army, rather the head of the armies. We have our fate in our own hands, And we need to make choices in the military dimension, but we also need to ensure our economic, technological, and industrial independence. We need to prepare for the situation of tariffs being imposed, as they have been on Mexico and Canada by the US. This is an incomprehensible situation, both for the US economy and our own. It increases the difficulties of this time, but it will not go unanswered. So as we work on a response with our European colleagues, we will continue, as I said 2 weeks ago, to try everything to convince those involved that this would be a harmful decision for all. And I hope very much to be able to dissuade the President of the United States of America. This is an age that requires unprecedented decisions. For our agriculture, our research, our industry, our whole area of public policy is going to have a different debate than in the past. And that's why I've asked the Prime Minister, the government, all political parties and political stakeholders to come up with proposals that are fitting to this new context. The decisions of tomorrow cannot be based on the habits of yesterday. So, my dear compatriots, because of these irreversible circumstances, we cannot indulge in excess of triumphalism or defeatism. We will follow a single course, the course towards peace and security, faithful to our history and our principles. That is what we believe in. We believe in our security, but we believe in the defense of democracy, an idea, if you like, of truth, of seeking freedom and respect in our society, protecting the freedom of expression, which is not return to the language of hate, but of humanism. That is what is at stake. We have the economic strength, power, and talent to respond to the challenges ahead of us. And we have the means, when we compare ourselves to the US, we have the means to unite. We have the means to be determined. France needs you. It needs your commitment. Budgets, armaments, defense are one thing, but it will never replace the lifeblood of a nation. We will not benefit any longer from the peace dividend. It's now up to us, for our children, tomorrow, to earn the dividends of our commitments today. We will confront these challenges together. Long live the Republic.